you guys. I'm trying to. That's one thing that's so finicky with streaming from my phone. It's hard to find the perfect angle. I think this one's good. Okay. So yeah, Dorian saying that he he ditched Lady Agatha. He was a no-show on a date they had, and that's why she's sour on him. That'll do it, alright. I think nothing kills your chances on a date like not showing up for the date. We were to have played it, and yeah, that hasn't changed much at all. I feel like people are meaningless now in the coronavirus times, but yeah, some of the principles stay the same. It's like if you're meeting someone on a date and you do not show up, yeah, it does not look good. We were to have played a duet together. 3 duets, I believe. I don't know what she will say to me. I'm far too frightened to call, he says. Duet, in turn, suggests that Dorian, much like his interest in the sheet music for the piano, that he's musically talented. Oh, I will make your peace with my aunt. She is quite devoted to you. And I don't really think it matters about your not being there. The audience probably thought it was a duet. When Aunt Agatha sits down at the piano, she makes quite enough noise for 2 people. That's very horrid to her, and not very nice to me, answered Dorian, laughing. Lord Henry looked at him. Yes, he was certainly wonderfully handsome, with his finely curved scarlet lips, his frank blue eyes, his crisp gold hair. There was something in his face that made one trust him at once. All the candor of youth was there, as well as all youth's passionate purity. One felt that he had kept himself unspotted from the world. Again, like that hill that I kind of referred to yesterday, snow-covered hill. It's like it's pure, and that makes it all the more special. It hasn't been touched. God's reference here is to the Bible, James 1:27, pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to keep himself unspotted from the world. King James Version. Yep, there you have it. No wonder Basil Hallward worshipped him. You're too charming to go in for philanthropy, Mr. Gray. Far too charming. And Lord Henry flung himself down the divan and opened his cigarette case. The painter had been busy mixing his colors and getting his brushes ready. He was looking worried. Show me the face. Yeah, he was worried. When he heard Lord Henry's last remark, he glanced at him, hesitated for a moment, and then said, Harry, I want to finish this picture today. Would you think it awfully rude of me if I asked you to go away? Lord Henry smiled and looked at Dorian Gray. Am I to go, Mr. Gray? He asked. Oh, please don't. Please don't, Lord Henry. I see that Basil's one of his sulky moods, and I can't bear him when he sulks. Besides, I want you to tell me why I should not go in for philanthropy. Yeah, interestingly, Dorian Gray wants Lord Henry to stay. Yeah, Dorian wants him to stay. And yet, again, like, Dorian is showing interest in Lord Henry. Again, it's like Basil to Dorian, Dorian to Lord Henry. He's like, oh, do go on. Do go on, Lord Henry. I don't know what I shall tell you that, Mr. Gray. It is so tedious a subject that one would have to talk seriously about it. But I certainly shall not run away now that you've asked me to stop. You don't really mind, Basil, do you? You've often told me that you liked your sitters to have someone to chat to. Yeah, I'm sick, guys. Probably no exercise during today. I'm just feeling like... He likes his sitters to have someone to talk to. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Howard bit his lip. If Dorian wishes it, of course, you must stay. Dorian's whims are laws to everybody except himself. Lord Henry took up his hat and gloves. You're very pressing, Basil, but I'm afraid I must go. I've promised to meet a man at the Orleans. That's a small social club, not the state. Not the capital of Louisiana. I got my facts mixed up. I believe Baton Rouge is the capital of Louisiana. New Orleans is one of the major cities of Louisiana, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, but anyway, this is a social club in London. Goodbye, Mr. Gray. I wonder what New Orleans would have been like back then. I don't know, certainly different. Yeah, I don't think it would have been quite the same size as today. Some things change over time. Goodbye, Mr. Gray. Come and see me some afternoon in Curzon Street. In London's fashionable Mayfair neighborhood. I'm nearly always at home at 5 o'clock. Write to me when you're coming. I should be sorry to miss you. Basil, cried Dorian Gray. If Lord Henry Wotton goes, I shall go too. You never open your lips while you're painting, and it's horribly dull standing on a platform and trying to look pleasant. Ask him to stay. I insist on it. I insist upon it. I guess entertainment value for the sitter. Yeah, it's interesting too. It's like, I don't know. Yeah, it's like sometimes when people are sitting for paintings, it helps them to talk to somebody. And in the case of like Van Gogh, or the one example that's going to mind is Leonardo DiCaprio in the Titanic when he's like sketching Rose in the nude. Like she's just laying there looking at him. She doesn't really need anyone else to talk to. Dorian, though, that's not the case. Like he definitely wants someone to talk to. He can't just stare at Basil drawing him or painting him the entire time. Stay, Harry, to oblige Dorian, and to oblige me, said Hallward, gazing intently at his picture. It's almost interesting how he puts it, right? It's like, please do this because it would make Dorian happy. He's not saying, like, please do this because I want you to do this. He's saying, please do it because it's what Dorian wants, and by extension, it's what I want. It's like, that's how strong his affection is for Dorian. It's like things that make him happy are things that I want too. Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff, guys. Pretty interesting. It's quite true. I never talk when I'm working and never listen either. It must be dreadfully tedious for my unfortunate sitters. I beg you to stay. I don't know if it's that bad. Unless it takes them a long time to paint it, of course. But I mean, there are worse things to do. There are more boring things to do, even back then. Dorian Gray stepped up on the dice with the air of a young Greek martyr and made a little move. It's moo, which is a pout of discontent to Lord Henry, to whom he'd rather taken a fancy. See, I already caught on with that, guys. Like, he's already got the hots for Lord Henry. And Basil's like, oh gosh. It does seem like Basil doesn't feel as strongly about Lord Henry as Dorian does. Seems like Dorian's more attracted to Lord Henry. But part of that could be the phenomenon of what I like to call the new and exciting phase, where it's like you're just meeting someone for the first time. You have those like stars and sparkles in your eyes, and you're like, whoa. I just met someone I'm just now meeting you. It's like that. I think that is partly what Dorian is experiencing. He's like, yes, I'm finally meeting you, Lord Henry. I want to know more. Versus like someone you've been married to for 20 years, it's like dead sparks. It's like, I see you every day for the last 20 years. I know everything there is to know about you. It's like the new and exciting thing, basically. The new and exciting person here for Dorian is Lord Henry. New and exciting. Alright, let's see, where am I? Down here. After a few moments... Oh, sorry, guys. He was so unlike Basil. Yeah, he was so unlike Basil. They made a delightful contrast. And he had such a beautiful voice. After a few moments, he said to him, "Have you really a very bad influence, Lord Henry? As bad as Basil says? There's no such thing as good influence, Mr. Gray. All influence is immoral. Immoral from the scientific point of view." So it seems like Lord Henry and Basil are in agreement. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's like they're both talking about Lord Henry speaking with Dorian. And it's like, was you guys meeting as bad as Basil says? And then Lord Henry says, he's like, yeah, I hate talking to people. From the scientific point of view, he says. What more? Why? Because to influence a person is to give him one's own soul. Kind of like the way I was describing it yesterday, is it's like, once you start interacting with someone, it's like they're pretty much never the same after that. Like, you can try to forget some interactions that you have with people, but it's kind of like you take your hand and you put it in some paint, and then you touch like a white canvas or something. That white canvas represents the person you're speaking to. That handprint is like always going to be there. It might fade with time, but your influence lasts until the person can no longer remember what you were or what you said. I think it's more temporary than it seems here. He does not think his, although it's not always temporary. I guess to what extent it is temporary depends on the person, the interaction, what type of influence it was. Even circumstances can change that type of influence. It's like setting, like how, when, and where two people are interacting with each other can shape that. His virtues are not real to him. Sorry, I missed a sentence. He does not think his natural thoughts are burned with his natural passions. His virtues are not real to him. His sins, if there are such things as sins, are borrowed. He becomes an echo of someone else's music, an actor of a part that has not been written for him. The aim of life is self-development. To realize one's nature perfectly. That is what each of us here is for. People are afraid of themselves nowadays. It's like, just don't look in the mirror. They have forgotten the highest of all duties, the duty that one owes to oneself. It's like they've gotten lazy in a way. Seems like Lord Henry is saying. Of course they're charitable. They feed the hungry and clothe the beggar. But their own souls starve and are naked. Courage has gone out of our race. Perhaps we never really had it. The terror of society, which is the basis of mortals, the terror of God, which is the secret of religion. These are the two things that govern us, and yet it's hard to say what Lord Henry... Is it Lord Henry that's talking? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's hard to say what exactly Lord Henry thinks of here when he thinks of sources of self-development. He says courage. Is he like referring to like a fireman rushing into a burning building? Yeah, it's not really clear. He wants people to be brave in some sense. But like, I when I think of this, I kind of think of like someone's tied up on the train tracks or something, and then the hero comes and gets them off the tracks. Maybe that's how Lord Henry's thinking about it. It's like there's no one who's getting anyone off of train tracks anymore. What's wrong with the worlds? Yeah, I don't know, Lord Henry. Maybe there just aren't enough trains anymore. Yeah, I don't know. Just turn your head a little more to the right, Dorian. Like a good boy, said the painter, deep in his work. Basil's wording here somewhat reflects their relationship. Like a good boy, so he's kind of like playful with Dorian. Conscious only that a look had come into the lad's face that he'd never seen there before. And yet, continued Lord Henry. I'm sick as a dog. Common cold, I think. But yeah, thank you for bearing with me for today's picture of Dorian Gray. Alright. It is a look he never saw before. And yet, continued Lord Henry in his low musical voice, and with that graceful wave of the hand that was always so characteristic of him, and that he'd, even in his Eton days, that's the most vanishable English public, that is private secondary school. High school, I guess. I believe that if one man were to live out his life fully and completely were to give form to everything, expression to every thought, reality to every dream, I believe that the world would gain such a fresh impulse of joy that we would forget all the maladies of medievalism and return to the Hellenic ideal, relating to the period in classical Greece and applying our respect for reason, civic responsibility, and other ideals, including love between men, to become finer, richer than the Hellenic ideal it may be. Uh, it's like drink the drink, uh, yeah, dance the dance, live life to the fullest, guys. Climb the mountain, kiss the boy. Yeah, kiss the boy. But the bravest man among us is afraid of himself. The mutilation of the savage has its tragic survival in the self denial that mars our lives. Tragic survival. I think I'm gonna need new Kleenex. Be right back. Tragic survival. Okay, I'm back. Alright, where were we? The bravest man among us is afraid of himself. The mutilation of the savage has its tragic survival in the self-denial that mars our lives. It's like you're afraid of your reflection in a way, but I think it's more about how you are, the way you are, maybe even as minute as the way your voice sounds. It's like, I hate my voice. I hate that, you start looking at the things about yourself that you don't like. Could be your skin problem, could be anything. Anything that you don't actually like about yourself. Like that. Like, yeah, I might have an eye infection, my eyes puffed up, but that's not the real me. Kind of thing. We are punished for our refusals. Every impulse that we strive to strangle broods in the mind and poisons us. The body sins once and has done with its sin, for action is a mode of purification. Yeah, so these guys see love as a doing word. Nothing remains then but the recollection of a pleasure or the luxury of a regret. Yeah, so like act, do, grab the boy. The only way to get rid of a temptation is to yield to it. And yes, I'd say that many men have gotten in a lot of trouble using that exact same line of reasoning, especially when it comes to women. Don't fall into the trap. Although I guess with men, especially back then, it was more like men have. I think they've always been that way. It's like, yeah, go ahead and just grab me. Doesn't matter where you grab me, just grab me. Whether they're straight or gay, it's like the same way. It's like if I like you, you can touch me wherever you want. And men, I think, are more accepting of that than women are. Yeah, hard to say why that's the case, but maybe it has to do with physique or something. Yeah, physique, I'm assuming. Yeah, but yeah, these guys are saying Go for it. Resist it, and your soul grows sick with longing for the things it has forbidden to itself, with desire for what its monstrous laws have made monstrous and unlawful. Yeah. So, yeah, give in to. It's like run off of impulse. Yeah, run off of impulse. And yeah, for for homosexual guys, I think it's more straightforward. They don't have to worry about bringing kids into the world or anything like that. It's just all life is one big fun game. Yeah, that's not entirely fair, but it doesn't have the exact same dynamic as a male female relationship. For that reason, they don't have to use birth control, for example. It has been said that the great events of the world take place in the brain. It is in the brain, and the brain only, that the great sins of the world take place also. Yeah, yeah, really interesting quote here. They take place in the brain. It's like the brain. It controls everything about you, like who you are, things that you do, your personality, your actions, even involuntary actions like blinking your eyes and breathing, talking, the words that are coming out of my mouth now, the gestures that I'm making with my hand, all that is controlled by my brain. In a way, it's like my brain also has the power of imagination. Dreams and fantasies are all stored here too. This entire world, in a sense, right, is stored here in my brain. Once my brain dies, so does all of this. Like everything goes away once this does. Pretty heavy stuff, guys. Like everything is in here. The entire world's, my own world is in here. Like all the people I've met, everything that I see, everything that I've done, it's all in here. You, Mr. Gray, you yourself with your rose-red youth and your rose-white boyhood, you've had passions that have made you afraid, thoughts that have filled you with terror, daydreams and sleeping dreams, whose mere memory might stain your cheek with shame. Stop, faltered Dorian Gray. Stop. You bewildered me. I don't know what to say. There is some answer to you, but I cannot find it. Don't speak. Let me think, or rather, let me try not to think. Yeah, again, Lord Henry's being vague again. Like, does he know something we don't know? And maybe it's like maybe it's one of those like Sherlock Holmes things where it's like once he has just like extremely sharp like observation skills, and through like the power of amazing observational skill and analytical ability, he can like just quickly assess what he knows about someone. Or I guess another example is like Hannibal Lecter in Silencing of the Lambs. It's like, yo, you cheap bag. You know, your bag and your cheap shoes. Like that kind of person. Like, they see you and they automatically form an assessment. Because they're so smart. Or, yeah, maybe they're just well educated or something like that. Yeah, maybe Lord Henry's just very well educated, or maybe he's just met a lot of people like Dorian Gray and he already knows how they are. For nearly 10 minutes he stood there motionless, with parted lips and eyes strangely bright. He was dimly conscious that entirely fresh influences were at work with him, yet they seemed to him to have really come from himself. The few words that Basil's friend had said to him, words spoken by chance no doubt, and with willful paradox in them, had touched some secret chord that had never been touched before, but that he felt was now vibrating and throbbing to curious impulses. It's like yeah, it's like he's meeting Lord Henry he's just now meeting Lord Henry, and Lord Henry's saying things that are like, kind of like, not really, I guess kind of playful in a way, but they're like, go on, Lord Henry, go on, tell me more. I haven't heard anyone say this kind of stuff before. Music had stirred him like that. Music had troubled him many times, but music was not articulate. It was not a new world, but rather another chaos that it created in us. Words, mere words, how terrible they were. If everything can only be a note or a chord. It doesn't actually say that, I paraphrase a little bit. How clear and vivid and cruel. One could not escape from them. And yet, what a subtle magic there was in them. They seemed to be able to give a plastic form to formless things, and to have a music of their own as sweet as that of viol or of a lute. Like lute's like string instrument. Clink, clink, clink. Oh man. We're back. Okay. Music had stirred him. They seem to be able to give a plastic form to formless things, and to have a music of their own as sweet as that of viol or of the lute. Mere words. Is there anything so real as words? Yes, there had been things in his boyhood that he had not understood. He understood them now. Life suddenly became fiery colored to him. Maybe it's like reminding him of elements of his childhood, memories of his youth. He's like, oh yes, I remember how it was in London town. I remember how it was in England. It seemed to him that he had been walking in fire. Why had he not known it? With his subtle smile, Lord Henry watched him. He knew the precise psychological moment when to say nothing. Yeah, Lord Henry's... Yeah. He's smart, savvy. Maybe he's just met a lot of people like Dorian and he just knows exactly what to say and when. Maybe it's a combination, right? Maybe he's educated and he's socially savvy. He knows when to smile. He knows when to nod. He knows when to use that line. So, Dorian, do you come here often? That kind of thing. Like he can hit all the notes. He felt intensely interested. He was amazed at the sudden impression that his words had produced, and remembering a book that he had read when he was 16, a book which had revealed to him that he had not known before, he wondered whether Dorian Gray was passing through a similar experience. He had merely shot an arrow into the air. Had it hit the mark? How fascinating that lad was. Howard painted away with that marvelous bold touch of his that he had the true refinement and perfect delicacy that in art at any rate comes only from strength. He was unconscious of the silence. Basil, I'm tired of standing, cried Dorian Gray suddenly. I must go out and sit in the garden. The air is stifling here. I thought that he already created a portrait of Dorian Gray. I don't know, but yeah, here he's creating another one. Or perhaps it's the first one, I don't know. Let's keep reading. My dear fellow, I'm so sorry. When I'm painting, I can't think of anything else. But you never sat better. You were perfectly still. And I have caught the effect I wanted. The half-parted lips and the bright look in the eyes. There's just something so poetic, even just about the way Basil speaks to Dorian, right? It was just, everything was perfect. The way you sat, the way you looked. I don't know what Harry's been saying to you, but he has certainly made you have the most wonderful expression. I suppose he has been paying you compliments. You mustn't believe a word that he says. He's certainly not been paying me compliments. Perhaps that's the reason that I don't believe anything he's told me. Like it's, like he's just kind of messing with him. Like he's like teasing him in a way. He's not been paying compliments. You know you believe it all, said Lord Henry, looking at him with his dreamy, languorous eyes. Should I look this up? Yeah, why not? Languorous. And interestingly, it's spelled U-O-R-O-U-S. Languorous. Characterized by tiredness or inactivity, especially of a pleasurable kind. Okay, there you have it. Summer has a slow, languorous feel to it here. Kind of like when you're sitting in the recliner. Yeah, exactly like the recliner. It's like you're just relaxing. People might do it laying in bed sometimes if they're watching TV. Like relaxing in a languorous way. Or I think of like who was it? Like Julius Caesar. Or maybe Jabba the Hutt. But here, Lord Henry's just kind of enjoying the time that he's spending with Dorian and Basil. I'll go out to the garden with you. It's horribly hot in the studio. Basil, let us have something iced to drink. Something with strawberries in it. Smoothie comes to mind. Or maybe like strawberry lemonade with authentic strawberries in it. Like the ones with actual chunks of strawberry inside. I don't know. Let's see what he comes back with. Certainly, Harry. Just touch the bell, and when Parker comes, I'll tell him what you want. Parker's the butler. I've got to work up this background, so I'll join you later on. Don't keep Dorian too long. I've never been in better form for painting than I am today. This is going to be my masterpiece. It is my masterpiece as it stands. Lord Henry went out to the garden and found Dorian Gray burying his face in the great cool lilac blossoms, feverishly drinking in their perfume as if it had been wine. Yeah, so he's like literally smelling the flowers, taking time to smell the roses. He came close to him and put his hand upon his shoulder. You're quite right to do that. He murmured, "Nothing can cure the soul but the senses, just as nothing can cure the senses but the soul." Yeah. Just gonna make a quip here where it's like, it's kind of like those old like Billy Mays videos. It's like burgers with nothing but cheese, cheese with nothing but burgers. It's like, okay, Basil, okay. Yeah, so I think you're on the right track. Like, nothing can cure the senses but the soul. Nothing can cure the soul but the senses. It's like a circular statement that Basil's making. I don't know what he means curing the senses either. Kind of mysterious. Like what I think he means is like feeling like a breeze on your skin, or like eating like really good chocolate ice cream or something like that. Yeah, it's like, yeah, smelling those flowers, sitting in the hot tub. I guess is another example. It's like feeling the warm water on your skin. Nothing can cure the senses but the soul. The lad started and drew back. He was bareheaded, and the leaves had tossed his rebellious curls and tangled all their gilded threads. There was a look of fear in his eyes, such as people have when they are suddenly awakened. His just woke up. His finely chiseled nostrils quivered, and some hidden nerve shook the scarlet of his lips and felt them trembling. Yes, continued Lord Henry. That is one of the great secrets of life, to cure the soul by means of the senses, and the senses by means of the soul. You're a wonderful creation. You know more than you think you know, just as you know less than you want to know. Yeah, really interesting statement here by Lord Henry. I think that's the way most people are, right? It's like you can't always remember all the things that you know. Some pieces of knowledge come to you at different times. Sometimes you re-remember something that you learned a long time ago. You underestimate how much you actually know. And then it's like you're still trying to learn new things. It's kind of like you're trying to estimate like what you actually know. And I think it's like the thirst for knowledge, basically. It's like I already know all of this, but I still want to know more. Let me catch up with chat. Focus on the image. Yeah, on that note, Sotos, I'm going to be right back. I need to blow my nose. It's just constant today. Like, yeah, I'm draining a lot. Okay, I'm back. Alright, thanks for waiting, Sotos. Yeah, I just had to keep blowing my nose, blowing my nose, blowing my nose. So Lord Henry's just complimented Dorian. Yeah, he's just complimenting Dorian. He's like, "You're wonderful, Dorian." Yeah, he's like, "You're magnificent. You're wonderful, Dorian." Dorian Gray frowned and turned his head away. He could not help liking the tall, graceful young man who was standing by him. His romantic olive-colored face and warm expression interested him. There was something in his low, languid voice that was absolutely fascinating. His cool, white, flower-like hands even had a curious charm. They moved as he spoke, like music, and seemed to have a language of their own. But he felt afraid of him, and ashamed of being afraid. He had known Basil Howard for... Oh, oops, I missed that sentence. Why had it been left for a stranger to reveal him to himself? Yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept, right? It's like meeting some kinds of people helps you learn more about yourself. Things that you didn't know you knew. Like, I think this happens most often when people are dating, maybe not dating, maybe they've been together for a while and they want to try something new together. Like, we never, we never put puzzles together, or we never go bowling together. Let's try it. Or, we've never been salsa dancing. Like, I think that's kind of like how it is. It's like you're discovering something new with this other person. And that's how Dorian is for Lord Henry. Right here, it's like he had known Basil Howard for months, but the friendship between them had never altered him. Suddenly there had come one across his life who seemed to have disclosed to him life's mystery. So yeah, he's definitely more attracted to Lord Henry, at least at this point in time. Basil has been more attracted to Dorian than Dorian had for him. Dorian's affections for Basil have been pretty static, whereas Basil's built that shrine for Dorian. And now here comes this new guy, Lord Henry, and Dorian's like, "Hey, handsome." Yeah, like that's exactly how it is. Like, "Hey, handsome." And yet, what was there to be afraid of? He was not a schoolboy or a girl. It was absurd to be frightened. "Let us go and sit in the shade," said Lord Henry. "Parker has brought out the drinks, and if you stay any longer in this glare, you'll be quite spoiled, and Basil will never paint you again. You really must not allow yourself to become sunburnt. It would be unbecoming." I think that's a pretty harsh assessment by Lord Henry, right? It's like, if you get sunburnt, the light will be dashed from his eyes. He'll never see you the same way again if you get sunburnt. He'll never paint you again. And it's like, really, Lord Henry? Sunburns last like what? So it's like a few days maybe. You put some aloe vera on it, and you might feel a little bit sensitivity in the area, hot to touch, a little tender in the area you got burned. But after a few days, I think like a week at the most, it's gone. Excuse me. Maybe it's like, hey, let me check the chat. Yeah, Lord Henry. Right now we have Basil, Lord Henry, the butler. What? what's his name? The butlers. We just talked about him. Parker. Yeah, we have Lord Henry, Basil, Dorian Gray. Those are our main characters, and then Parker's like a minor character who's also introduced. He's the butler, and then it also is talked about Lady Agatha. She's the aunt of Lord Henry. This takes place in, I believe, the Victorian era. Let me take a look, Sotos. I need to blow my nose soon anyway. Let's see. When was it published, this book? Yeah, I don't know when it was originally published. June 20th, 1890. Let's see, what period of that was that in London? Yeah, you can probably see my nose dripping. It's like, it's horrible. Blow my nose, blow my nose, blow my nose. Okay, I'm back. Maybe they don't have aloe. Let me take a look, Sotos. What era was it? I believe this was after the Victorian era. It was the world's largest city and capital of the British Empire. London was at that time. If my memory serves, that's also when London was at its zenith. Like, you know when they say, like, the sun never sets on the British Empire? I think that was this time. I might be wrong about that. I think pre-World War One. Maybe it would help for me to look at a timeline. Yeah, I think I'm just sick, you know. 1880s, 1890s. I believe the Victorian era preceded this. Actually, yeah, no, it wasn't the Victorian era. The Victorian era extended from June 20th, 1837, it's telling me now, to January 22nd, 1901. So yeah, I was right when I said it's in Victorian England. So yeah, Queen Victoria was still reigning at the time. As for whether or not they had aloe, I'm pretty sure they did, Sotos. The earliest documentation of aloe was discovered on the clay boards from Nippur, which date back as long ago as 2200 BC. So that tells me that they already had aloe vera as a sunburn treatment in Victorian era England. It might not be as consumer friendly as it is today, but I believe they still had it then. Let me look at the history of aloe vera before I move on. Because, yeah, I'm pretty sure they had aloe vera then. The way I'm thinking about it is like, yeah, I don't have time to read through all this right now, but the way I'm thinking about it is like, he see, Lord, sorry, not Lord Henry, Basil, Lord Henry's cautioning Dorian. He's like, don't let Basil see you like that. He's not going to want to paint you again. I think what he's referring to is Basil seeing Dorian sunburnt, and it will change the way that he sees Dorian. He'll no longer be perfect. He'll no longer be untouched by the world, as it said. It's like getting paint on the snow-covered hill or something like that. You know, getting dirt on it. I think I'll start likening it to like a white canvas, like it's pure white, and then you get some paint on it. That's kind of like how the sunburn is. Even though it goes away, it might change the way that Basil sees Dorian Gray. Yeah, we're towards the end of the chapter too. We're almost done. We're on page 24 now. Let's see, where am I? I think I'm at the top. What can it matter? Yeah, I'm at the top. What can it matter? Cried Dorian Gray, laughing as he sat down on the seat at the edge of the garden. It should matter everything to you, Mr. Gray. Why? Because you're the most marvelous youth, and youth is the one thing worth having. It's like the thrill of youth. It's like once that's spent, you're never going to have it again. It's like, enjoy life while you're young kind of thing. I think that's why some people choose to die young. They want to like preserve their youth. They don't want to grow old. They always want to have that like youth and vitality preserved until the end of time. But yeah. Because you've the most marvelous youth. I don't feel that, Lord Henry. No, you don't feel it now. Someday when you're old and wrinkled and ugly, and thought has seared your forehead with its lines, and passion branded your lips with its hideous fires, you will feel it. You will feel it terribly. Now, wherever you go, you charm the world. Will it always be so? You've a wonderfully beautiful face, Mr. Gray. Don't frown. You have, and beauty is a form of genius. It is higher indeed than genius, as it needs no explanation. It is one of the great facts of the world, like sunlight or springtime, or the reflection in the dark waters of that silver shell we call the moon. It cannot be questioned. And I've referred to this several times, and I often cite like celebrities in my examples, like Scarlett Johansson, Ryan Reynolds, just people who are like objectively beautiful. It's like everyone knows they're beautiful. Matthew McConaughey to some people, it's like of course, can't you see he's good looking? Lord Henry saying that it won't be the case once he gets older. It cannot be questioned. It has its divine right of sovereignty. It makes princes of those who have it. You smile? Ah. When you've lost it, you won't smile. People say sometimes that beauty is only superficial. Yeah, that's said a lot. It's like beauty is only skin deep. But at least it's not so superficial as thought is. To me, beauty is the wonder of wonders. It's only shallow people who do not judge by appearances. Really interesting, again, statement by Lord Henry. He's like, only shallow people don't think of the value of beauty. When I think like our culture thinks like it's the other way around, right? It's like you look at the movie like Shallow Hal. Like he's only interested in beautiful women. And then it's like he has the voodoo done on him, and then he starts seeing, chunkier women, bigger women around as beautiful. But here, Lord Henry's disagreeing with that. He's like, no, you're shallow if you don't see the value in beauty. If you don't admire beautiful people, you're shallow. Lord Henry's a pretty interesting guy. The true mystery. Let's see, where was I? The true mystery of the world is the visible, not the invisible. Yes, Mr. Gray, the gods have been good to you. But what the gods give, they quickly take away. You've only a few years in which to live really perfectly and fully. When your youth goes, your beauty will go with it, and then you'll suddenly discover that there are no triumphs left for you, or have to content yourself with those mean triumphs that the memory of your past will make more bitter than defeats. I think, youth and beauty are both prized, because both I think wither and fade with time, and that's what Lord Henry's explaining in Dorian right now. He's like, yeah, you're young and you're good looking right now, but how long is that going to last? Every month as it wanes brings you nearer to something dreadful. Time is jealous of youth and wars against your lilies and your roses. You will become sallow and hollow-cheeked and dull-eyed. You will suffer horribly. Realize your youth while you have it. Don't squander the gold of your days listening to the tedious, trying to improve the hopeless failure, or giving away your life to the ignorant, the common, and the vulgar. These are the sickly aims, the false ideals of our age. Live the wonderful life that is in you. Let nothing be lost upon you. Be always searching for new sensations. Be afraid of nothing, a new hedonism. That is what our century wants. Let's see, it has a footnote here, but I can't find it. You might be its visible symbol. With your personality, there's nothing you could not do. The world belongs to you for a reason. The moment I met you, I saw that you were quite unconscious of what you really are, of what you might really be. I didn't know about you before I met you, pretty much. And when I'm thinking about him, describing this, I'm kind of thinking of, Madonna. Do the most with your life while you're young. You might be its visible symbol. With your personality, there's nothing you could not do. The world belongs to you for a season. The moment I met you, I saw that you were quite unconscious of what you really are. There was so much in you that charmed me that I felt I must tell you something about yourself. I thought how tragic it would be if you were wasted. For there is such a little time that your youth will last. Such a little time. The common hill flowers wither, but they blossom again. The laburnum will be as yellow next June as it is now. In a month there will be purple stars on the clematis. That's a large flowered vine. And year after year the green night of its leaves will hold its purple stars, but we never get back our youth. It's like once it's gone, it's gone. The pulse of joy that beats in us at 20 becomes sluggish. Our limbs fail, our senses rot. We degenerate into hideous puppets, haunted by the memory, the passions of which we were too much afraid, and the exquisite temptations that we had not the courage to yield to. Here he's saying it's like it takes courage to, to give in. Youth. There's absolutely nothing in the world but youth. It's like, okay, Lord Henry. This is a guy who's not a fan of getting old. Okay? Lord Henry. He's like, man, I don't want to get old. And I think this exact same thinking is the exact same reason why Hunter S. Thompson shot himself. He's like, man, I'm going to be 65 next year. See you later, everybody. I don't want to freaking, turn to wrinkles and gray and forget everything. I need a cane to walk around, then you can just go on and on. I don't want to get old. Don't let it happen to me. The fountain of youth. Lord Henry's arrogant. Oh, Sotos. Yeah, they're definitely gay, these guys. Yeah, Dorian likes Lord Henry. Basil likes Dorian. They have feelings for each other. They're definitely gay. Um, Beauty opens new doors. True, big true. You know, look at the biggest TikTokers, and yeah, exactly. Your point is made. Like people who are the most good looking have the biggest followings on social media. It is like a very shallow type of platform, and yeah, it's like yeah, you're right. Like beauty does open doors and windows, whatever you call it. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. So it's like beauty, youth and beauty. He's like, I don't want to get old. Lord Henry's saying. Dorian Gray listened, open-eyed and wondering. He's like, hmm. The spray of lilac fell from his hand upon the gravel. A furry bee came and buzzed around it for a moment. Zzz. Then it began to scramble all over the oval stellated, that star-shaped globe of the tiny blossoms. He watched it with that strange interest in trivial things that we try to develop when things of high import make us afraid, or when we are stirred by some new emotions for which we cannot find expression, or when some thought that terrifies us lays siege suddenly to the brain and calls on us to yield. After a time, the bee flew away. Bzzz. He saw it creeping into the stained trumpet of a Tyrian convolvulus. It's a morning glory vine. Maybe I could show you guys. Yeah, they're in a garden pretty much. So yeah, that's what they're looking at right now. It's like all these plants that are around them. All the things, all the plants. They're just musing about like youth, beauty, life themes. Suddenly, the painter appeared at the door of the studio and made staccato signs for them to come in. They turned to each other and smiled. I'm waiting, he cried. Do come in. The light is quite perfect, and you can bring your drinks. They rose up and sauntered down the walk together. Two green-white butterflies fluttered past them, and in the pear tree at the corner of the garden, a thrush began to sing. You're glad you met me, Mr. Gray, said Lord Henry, looking at him. Yes, I'm glad now. I wonder, shall I always be glad? Will I always think of and remember you this way? I don't think he will. I think his new person effect will like fade over time. But Lord Henry, of course, says always. That is a dreadful word. It makes me shudder when I hear it. Women are so fond of using it. They spoil every romance by trying to make it last forever. Yeah. Lord Henry again, hitting the nail on the head. I don't know how he does it, folks. I don't know how. They try to make it last forever. It is a meaningless word, too. The only difference between a capri and a lifelong passion is that the capri lasts a little longer. As they entered, it's like things change over time. So just the reality. As they entered the studio, Dorian Gray put his hand upon Lord Henry's arm. In that case, let our friendship be a capri, he murmured, flushing at his own boldness, and stepped onto the platform and resumed his pose. Lord Henry flung himself into a larger wicker armchair and watched him. The sweep and dash of the brush on the canvas made the only sound that broke the stillness, except when now and then Howard stepped back to look at his work from a distance. In the slanting beams that streamed through the open doorway, the dust danced and was golden. The heavy scent of the roses seemed to brood over everything. After about a quarter of an hour, Howard stopped painting, looking for a long time at Dorian Gray and then for a long time at the picture, biting at the end of one of his huge brushes and frowning. "It's quite finished," he cried. At last, stooping down, he wrote his name in long vermilion letters on the left-hand corner of the canvas. Usually I think this signifies completion. It's like you put your initials at the bottom. Lord Henry came over and examined the picture. It was certainly a wonderful work of art, and a wonderful likeness as well. "My dear fellow, I congratulate you most warmly," he said. "It is the finest portrait of modern times. Mr. Gray, come over and look at yourself." The lad started, as if awakened from some dream. "Is it really finished?" he murmured, stepping down from the platform. "Quite finished," said the painter. "You sat splendidly today. I'm awfully obliged to you." "That's entirely due to me," broke in Lord Henry. "Isn't it, Mr. Gray?" Ever the egotist. It's like the only reason he was doing that was because I was here. Dorian made no answer but passed listlessly in front of his picture and turned towards it. When he saw it, he drew back and his cheeks flushed for a moment with pleasure. A look of joy came into his eyes as if he had recognized himself for the first time. He stood there motionless and in wonder, dimly conscious that Howard was speaking to him, but not catching the meaning of his words. The sense of his own beauty came on him like a revelation. He had never felt it before. Basil Howard's compliments had seemed to him to be merely the charming exaggerations of friendship. He had listened to them, laughed at them, forgotten them. They had not influenced his nature. Then had come Lord Henry Wotton with his strange panegyric on youth, his terrible warning of its brevity. Panegyric, let me see. Adrian and Henrik. I'm not sure who you're referring to, Sotos. Yeah, I'm just not sure. The word I'm looking at is panegyric. Panegyric, a public speech or published text in praise of some or something. So beauty, the fleeting nature of youth, is what Lord Henry is alluding to here. His terrible warning of its brevity. Like, yeah, some things you just can't escape, Sotos. Basil's drawing Dorian again. But this time he was drawing Dorian when he's speaking to Lord Henry, instead of just sitting there. They had not influenced his nature. Then had come Lord Henry Wotton with his strange panegyric. That had stirred him at the time, and now, as he stood gazing at the shadow of his own loveliness, the full reality of description flashed across him. Yes, there would be a day when his face would be wrinkled and wizened, his eyes dim and colorless, the grace of his figure broken and deformed. The scarlet would pass away from his lips and the gold steal from his hair. It would like turn to gray, pretty much. The life that was to make his soul would mar his body. He'd become dreadful, hideous, and uncouth. As he thought of it, a sharp pain of pain struck through him like a knife. That made each delicate fiber of his nature quiver. His eyes deepened into amethyst, and across them came a mist of tears. He felt as if a hand of ice had been laid upon his heart. I gotta blow my nose again. Be right back. So those. Okay. I'm back. Yeah, don't you like it? Cried Hallward at last, stung a little by the lad's silence, not understanding what it meant. Of course he likes it, said Lord Henry. Who wouldn't like it? It's one of the greatest things in modern art. I will give you anything you'd like to ask for it. I must have it. It's not my property, Harry. Well, then whose is it? Dorian's, of course, answered the painter. He's a very lucky fellow. How sad it is, murmured Dorian Gray, with his eyes still fixed upon his own portrait. How sad it is. I shall grow old and horrible and dreadful. But this picture will remain always young. It will never be older than this particular day of June. If it were only the other way. Like he's saying, if only this picture could age and I could stay young forever. Yeah, if only, Dorian. If only, if only. If it were I who was to be always young and the picture that was to grow old, for that, I would give everything. Yes, there is nothing in the whole world I would not give. I would give my soul for that. You would hardly care for such an arrangement, Basil, cried Lord Henry, laughing. It would be rather hard lines on your work. I should object very strongly, Harry, said Hallward. Dorian Gray turned and looked at him. I believe you would, Basil. You like your art better than your friends. I'm no more to you than a green bronze figure. Hardly as much, I dare say. The painter stared in amazement. It was so unlike Dorian to speak like that. What had happened? He seemed quite angry. His face was flushed, and his cheeks burning. Like he was exposed to a new idea, basically. The idea that his youth was fleeting. Maybe he just had, like, you know, the thrill of youth flooding his mind. He's like, la la la, I'm just gonna keep walking in the garden and riding roller coasters. Kind of thing. And it's like, now that Lord Henry has told him about this, now it's like he's taking time to think about this. He's like, oh shoot, that's right, this isn't gonna last forever. Oh no. It's like he's considering something he had not yet before, because Lord Henry incepted this idea into his brain. It's like, don't you know it's not gonna last forever? Yeah. Dorian. Dorian's good looking, we know that much. Sotos. As for his wealth, we don't really know much about that. I don't think that much reference has been made to his financial picture. We know he's good looking though. At least to guys, he's very good looking. Yes, he continued, I am less to you than your ivory Hermes or your silver fawn. Hermes was the messenger of Greek gods, Mercury in Roman mythology. Fawn is a lusty Roman nature god with the lower body of a goat, a satyr in Greek mythology. You will like them always. How long will you like me? Until I have my first wrinkle, I suppose, I know. Now that when one loses one's good looks, whatever they may have, whatever they may be, one loses everything. Your picture has taught me that. Lord Henry Wotton is perfectly right. Youth is the only thing worth having. When you find that I'm growing old, I shall kill myself. It's almost like it's almost kind of sad in some way that people just don't automatically like cut off like at like 30, 35. It's like, dude, like that. That was just the end. Like you didn't have to worry about going into old age. And yeah, that exact same Hunter S. Thompson mentality of like I'm never gonna get old because I'm gonna kill myself before that happens. Dorian's now having. Howard turned pale and caught his hand. Dorian, Dorian, he cried. Don't talk like that. I've never had such a friend as you, and I shall never have such another. You're not jealous of material things, are you? You who are finer than any of them. Um, yeah, it's hard to say like how much attraction is based on how people look too. It's like if all of your attraction is based only on looks, I guess that is the case, right? Where it's like when someone starts getting wrinkled and old, you're gonna stop being fond of them. Never mind all of your great conversations about getting old in the springtime and summertime and smelling flowers. Um, hmm. I'm jealous of everything whose beauty does not die. I'm jealous of the portrait you painted of me. Why should it keep what I must lose? Every moment that passes takes something from me and gives something to it. Oh, if it were only the other way. If the picture could change, and I could be always what I am now, and the world stopped spinning. Why did you paint it? It will mock me someday, mock me horribly. Like he's gonna look at this young painting of himself when he's old and gray, and he's gonna be like, I remember when I was that good looking. Like the Uncle Rico effect in Napoleon Dynamite. It's like back in my high school days. Like it's like that kind of thing going on. It's like if only I could have stayed in high school. If only I could have stayed that football star. Why did life have to march on? Why is it still going on? Why is it continuing? It's like, okay, Dorian, okay. Like, just take one breath at a time, Dorian. Yeah. The hot tears welled into his eyes. He tore his hand away, and flinging himself on the divan, he buried his face in the cushions as though he was praying. This is your doing, Harry, said the painter bitterly. Lord Henry shrugged his shoulders. It's the real Dorian Gray, that's all. Like, it's no longer this ultra ideal now. He's actually starting to think about things that are deep in meaning. He's a philosopher now. Whereas before he was just a model. Don't you see the value in that? It is not, Basil counters. If it is not, what do I have to do with it? If that's not the real Dorian, then what part did I have to play? You should have gone away when I asked you, he muttered. I stayed when you asked me, was Lord Henry's answer. It's kind of like ignorance is bliss kind of thing. It's like, if only you didn't tell him that. Now he's always going to think that way. Yeah, I guess so. That's the curse of knowledge, right? Like anytime you learn something new, you're gonna have the burden and weight of its knowledge as responsibility. Like you're the one who knows that now, so you're the one who carries that knowledge with you. Let's see. Yeah, Oscar Wilde, yeah. Yeah, he does, you're right. So does he doesn't want to lose his beauty, he doesn't want to lose his attractiveness, he doesn't want to get old. He wishes the picture could do that instead. I stayed when you asked me. Harry, I can't quarrel with my two best friends at once. But between you both, you've made me hate the finest piece of work I've ever done, and I will destroy it. What is it but canvas and color? I will not let it come across our three lives and mar them. I would be like, not Dorian, Basil. Like, Basil, you already have other paintings of Dorian before he already learned this. So why not just hold on to those? Why not just treasure and prize and treasure those? Like, you already had those other paintings of him back before he learned this new knowledge that now somehow made him less magical and fantastical to you now. You don't need to destroy it either. It's like, it's still a good painting. Dorian Gray lifted his golden head from the pillow, and with pallid face and tear-stained eyes looked at him as he walked over to the deal. That's pine or fir wood. Painting table that was set beneath the high curtain window. What was he doing there? His fingers were straying about among the litter of tin tubes and dry brushes, seeking for something. Yes, it was for the long palette knife with its thin blade of lithe steel. He found it at last. He was going to rip up the canvas. With a stifled sob, the lad leaped from the couch and, rushing over to Howard, tore the knife out of his hand. And flung it to the end of the studio. Don't, Basil, don't, he cried. It would be murder. I'm glad you appreciate my work at last, Dorian, said the painter coldly. When he had recovered from his surprise, I never thought you would. Sometimes you can do this with kids, too. It's like, where it's like, oh, okay, so I guess you don't want... It's like reverse psychology, basically. It's like, oh, so I guess you don't want the remote. Okay, I'll just take it. And then as soon as you do that, they're like, oh, no. It's like, no, I want it, you know. It's like, oh, now that I'm destroying the painting, now you like my paintings. Like, before I thought they were good looking. Before I valued them. And it's like he valued them less because of that. It's almost like a kind of like a scale in a way, right? It's like the more Basil cares about it, the less Dorian does. But now that Dorian wants to destroy it, now he wants it now. Yeah. It's like, okay, I guess it's going away now. And then it's like the kid, he's like, no, I want it now, I want it. As soon as you're dry, you shall be varnished and framed and sent home. Then you can do what you like with yourself. And he walked across the room and rang the bell for tea. You will have tea, of course, Dorian. And so will you, Harry? Or do you object to such simple pleasure? I adore simple pleasures, said Lord Henry. They are the last refuge of the complex. But I don't like scenes, except on the stage. What absurd fellows you both are, both of you. I wonder who it was to find man as a rational animal. It was the most premature definition ever given. Man is many things, but he is not rational. I am glad he is not, after all. Although I wish you chaps would not squabble over the picture. You had much better let me have it, Basil. That silly boy doesn't really want it, and I really do. If you let anyone have it but me, Basil, I shall never forgive you, cried Dorian. And I don't allow people to call me a silly boy. You know the picture is yours, Dorian. I gave it to you before it existed. And you know that you've been a little silly, Mr. Gray, and that you don't really object to being reminded that you are extremely young. I should have objected very strongly this morning, Lord Henry. Ah, this morning. You've lived since then. There came a knock at the door, and the butler entered with a laden tea tray and set it down upon a small Japanese table. There was a rattle of cups and saucers and the hissing of a fluted Georgian urn. Two globe-shaped china dishes were brought in by a page. Dorian Gray went over and poured out the tea. The two men sauntered languidly to the table and examined what was under the covers. "Let us go to the theater tonight," said Lord Henry. "There's sure to be something on somewhere. I promised to dine at White's. That's very old exclusive men's social club. But it's only with an old friend, so I can send him a wire to say that I'm ill or that I'm prevented from coming in consequence of a subsequent engagement. I think that would be a rather nice excuse. It would have all the surprise of candor." Yeah. So Dorian cancels on Lady Agatha, and now Lord Henry's canceling on his old friend at White's. He's like, "Oh, I can't make it. I'm watching a movie with Dorian Gray. Can you believe it?" "It is such a bore putting on one's dress clothes," muttered Hallward. "And when one has them on, they're so horrid." "Yes," answered Lord Henry dreamily. "The costume of the 19th century is detestable. It is so somber, so depressing. Sin is the only real color element left in modern life." "You really must not say things like that before Dorian, Harry." "Before which Dorian? The one who's pouring out tea for me, or tea for us, or the one in the picture?" "Before either." "I should like to come to the theater with you, Lord Henry," said the lad. "Then you shall come, and you will come too, Basil, won't you?" "I can't really. I would sooner not. I have a lot of work to do." "Well then, you and I will go along, Mr. Gray." "I should like that awfully." He can keep influencing Dorian with ideas about growing old and sickness, death, destruction. He's gonna be like the tragedy for Dorian. He's like, "Life sucks." And Dorian's like, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that before." That's how it is. The painter bit his lip and walked over, cup in hand, to the picture. "I shall stay with the real Dorian," he said, sadly. "I shall stay with the real one." I wonder why he describes the painting as the real Dorian. It seems strange to me. "Is it the real Dorian?" cried the original of the portrait, strolling across to him. "Am I really like that?" "Yes, you're just like that." "How wonderful, Basil." "At least you're like it in appearance, but it will never alter," sighed Hallward. "That is something. It will never age. It'll be like every painting has ever been. Like it will always be that way." Pictures are that way too. It's like take a picture today and it's always going to be looking the same way. Like pictures of me when I was a boy. Like in that picture I'll always be that way. Same thing today. It's like if I take a picture of myself today, that picture is always going to look the way it is today. Even 20 or 30 years down the line, when I'm starting to, get gray hairs and my muscles aren't as big anymore, all my systems start slowing down, that picture will still be the same. Okay. "What a fuss people make about fidelity," exclaimed Lord Henry. "Why, even in love it's purely a question for physiology. It has nothing to do with our own will. Young men want to be faithful, and are not. Old men want to be faithless, and cannot. That is all one can say." "Don't go to the theater tonight, Dorian," said Hallward. "Stop and dine with me." "I can't, Basil." "Why?" "Because I promised Lord Henry Wotton to go with him." And if we were paying attention in Chapter 2, we probably would have already expected Dorian to say that, right? as I've already pointed out like 2 or 3 times, like Dorian's already expressed more of an interest in Lord Henry than Basil. Basil's always like, eh. Like the guy I always see, he's like, eh. But Lord Henry's new, exciting, cool. He's telling me all about the worlds. It's like he likes him, but he likes someone else, kind of thing. He won't like you better for keeping your promises. He always breaks his own. I beg you not to go. Dorian Gray laughed and shook his head. I entreat you. The lad hesitated and looked over at Lord Henry, who was watching them from the tea table with an amused smile. I must go, Basil, he answered. Very well, said Hallward, and he went over and laid down his cup on the tray. It's rather late, and as you have to dress, you'd better lose no time. Goodbye, Harry. Goodbye. Goodbye, Dorian. Come and see me soon. Come tomorrow. Certainly. You won't forget? Of course not, cried Dorian. And Harry. Yes, Basil? Remember that I asked you when we were in the garden? Remember what I asked you when we were in the garden this morning? I've forgotten. I trust you. I wish I could trust myself, said Lord Henry, laughing. Like, what do you mean you trust him? Like, he just said he forgot. He forgot what it was. He's like, oh, you forgot? Oh, it's okay, I trust you. It's like, it's like, Basil, think about what you're saying, Basil. You may want to remind him of what you discussed before you say, it's okay. Come, Mr. Gray, my handsome is a horse-drawn taxi, which I think were they were like the cars back then. Horse-drawn carriages were the cars of that day. He's like, I'm parked outside. I can drop you at your own place. Goodbye, Basil. It has been a most interesting afternoon. As the door closed behind them, the painter flung himself down on the sofa, and a look of pain came onto his face. Ah, Basil. He was afraid of Lord Henry meeting Dorian Gray because he would start to become fascinated by his ideas. He thought he would be liked less. And now it's the case that Dorian has started to get feelings for Lord Henry, and now he's starting to spend more time with Lord Henry. Basil's like, I was afraid this would happen. He's like, I was afraid this would happen. Now he met the new guy, and now he's going to do all this other fun stuff with him. I think that's how a lot of relationships are in the early stages. It's like, especially relationships that you want to keep exclusive. You're like, don't smile or wink at anybody else. Don't smile and wave at anybody else. And now Dorian has with Lord Henry. Chapter 3. And the boyfriend or whoever's like, what the heck, man? Why are you stealing my girlfriend? Or, why are you... Or in this case, it's boyfriend. Why are you stealing my boyfriend? Dorian's young. Say that he will stay in his 20s. Basil's a kiddo. Yeah. Based on what it's saying, Sotos, I think Basil's older than Dorian. It seems like Dorian's the youngest one based on how he's referred to in the text. Your prediction about Basil staying young could come true. Let's see what happens. I think it's going to be the case where the picture gets older as he's wished, and then he stays young. But, yeah, as I've referred to in the past, immortality is not it's all cracked. Immortality is not all it's cracked up to be. Let me try it one more time. Immortality is not all it's cracked up to be. Because, as I've said, you can see everybody that you know die. Like, it sucks. Like, I don't think anyone would want to live forever. Alright, but thank you for watching, guys. That was Dorian Gray Chapter 2. Stormer Show signing off.